Dear friends, in the New Testament book of Hebrews, at the opening of its last chapter, actually verse 2, not verse 1, we read this beautiful yet enigmatic exhortation. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some have entertained angels without knowing it. But to appreciate the depth of this instruction, we need to return to the Hebrew Bible and listen to the story about Abraham and Sarah from Genesis 18. And I will ask our liturgist to read that passage for us.
This is taken from the Message, Genesis chapter 18, verses 1 through 10. God appeared to Abraham at the oaks of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance of his tent. It was the hottest part of the day. He looked up and saw 3 men standing. He ran from his tent to greet them and bowed before them. He said, "Master, if it please you, stop for a while with your servant. I'll get some water so you can wash your feet. Rest under the tree. I'll get some food to refresh you on your way, since your travels have brought you across my path." And they said, "Certainly, go ahead." Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah and said, "Hurry, get 3 buckets of our best flour, knead it, and make some bread." Then Abraham ran to the cattle pen and picked out a nice plump calf and gave it to the servant, who lost no time getting it ready. Then he got curds and milk, brought them with the calf that had been roasted, set the meal before the men, and stood there under the tree while they ate. The men said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" Abraham said, "In the tent." And one of them said, "I'm coming back in about this time next year. When I arrive, your wife Sarah will have a son."
Dear friends, this is the background of that exhortation from the book of Hebrews. Have you noticed sometimes those visitors are called angels, but occasionally it drifts, and that narrative drifts and calls them God, God self. And when you think about those preparations which are made there, 3 buckets of flour and a plump calf, that is not any quick snack. That is truly a divine feast. And there are other similar encounters in the Hebrew Bible, where hospitality opens the door to the divine. One can recall, for instance, the call of Gideon, Judge Gideon, or the parents of Samson before he was born. We are clearly peering into a time when angels and even gods of course in disguise, walked among mortals. And that is not limited to the Bible alone. It predates and crosses cultures. For instance, Canaanite stories, I know from Ugaritic literature, also speak of gods traveling the earth and being welcomed by mortals, honored by feasts. But perhaps the closest parallel to Abraham and Sarah's story is that of Philemon and Baucis, told by Roman poet Ovid in his Metamorphoses, and you will find it in your bulletin. Inside is an insert on a slightly smaller format. And it is that part, I think it is book 8 of Metamorphoses by Ovid, or Publius Ovidius Naso, it was his full name, Roman name. And it tells the story of elderly couple, poor but generous, who welcome two traveling strangers. Their home is humble, their resources are scarce, yet they offer their very best to those guests. And only when they ready themselves to sacrifice their only goose do their guests stop them, revealing their true identity. They are Zeus and Hermes in disguise. Philemon and Baucis are rewarded, given apotheosis, being lifted into semi-divine status, while their wealthy neighbors who slam their doors shut on those visiting deities, refusing hospitality, they get punished. Flood turns their fertile land into a wasteland. Elderly Abraham and Sarah mirror that Philemon and Baucis here, while their neighbors' fate echoes Sodom and Gomorrah. And here I need to make a commentary on it. To reduce Sodom and Gomorrah simply to a proverb of sexual sin, as has too often and unfortunately been done, is cultural and religious ignorance. The real lesson is about hospitality, the divine reward of the humble and the punishment of the arrogant and those who would not welcome strangers. The sin was not sex, but the abuse of sacred hospitality. And the promise belongs to those who welcome strangers. In my native Czech, we have a saying, host do domu, Bůh do domu. Guest in the house, God in the house. And the same proverb exists in Polish, gość w dom, Bóg w dom, and in Russian, gość w dom, Bóg w dom, and even in German, Gast im Haus, Gott im Haus. And that wisdom is frankly global. Arabic proverb says the guest is the beloved of God. And Sanskrit has the maxim, the guest is truly God. In Ghana, the stranger is a child of God. And in Icelandic tradition, Odin says, that's God, so it is coming from God, fire is needed by the newcomer, food and clothing too. Quite fitting for that far north, don't you think? The ancient Greeks even had it embedded in their vocabulary and theology. In Greek it was xenia, or as they would say, xenia, hospitality to strangers. And it was a sacred duty. That was, in that ancient understanding, what the people of Sodom and Gomorrah were breaking. This sacred duty of hospitality, or what the people of Tyana did not do, and only Philemon and Baucis did. And the Greek word in Hebrews, in that passage I quoted from Hebrews 13, verse 2, the very word translated hospitality to strangers is one single word, Philoxenia. Philo, that means love, And here we are again with that xenia or xenia, strangers, the love of strangers. Guests and God were equated in another word. It was Philoxenia. Theos being God, and xenos or xenia is hospitality towards God. Hospitality of the divine through hospitality to strangers, exactly like it is in our passage from Hebrews. Medieval Christians, monks said, Hospes venit, Christus venit. When a guest comes, Christ comes. Which brings us back to the New Testament and a profound parable which is recorded in Matthew 25, the parable of the last judgment. And in that parable, Christ comes to us in the hungry, in the thirsty, the stranger, the naked, the sick, and the imprisoned. Friends, when we sponsor refugees, just like we did as a congregation, when we support asylum seekers, as we do through Asylum Seekers Clinic, when we feed the hungry on Thursdays through Ulla Farmer Thursday Meal Program, or when we demand and petition that the starvation of Gaza's children is ended and the killing of them is stopped, when we oppose ICE raids of masked vigilante, it's difficult to call them police, when we advocate for health care for everyone, or protest inhumane prisons, we are not doing politics. Or here the politics is just a byproduct of our faith. You can see how well it matches that Matthew 25. We are practicing our faith. These are our acts of defiant worship, rooted in the Bible, in the commandments of coming to us from Christ, reaching back even before New Testament and Hebrew Bible and going to the wisdom of humanity. And that's why false religiosity is so dangerous. I can observe it probably most clearly in Europe because you need some distance to step back in order to recognize certain features or awkward, bizarre features. Over there, the loudest defenders of so-called European Christian values against migrants and refugees are often not any churchgoers, friends. No churchgoers at all. Many could not recite the Lord's Prayer if their lives depended on it. In secular Europe, it's easier to notice this bizarre feature. But we know them here too, don't we? Those who twist Christianity into an ideology of intolerance and cruelty. Do you, for instance, remember the posturing with the upside-down Bible, that photo op in Washington, D.C.? Or the awkward reading from the teleprompter, quoting 1 Corinthians, while everyone knows that it is the 1 Corinthians, it's an epistle. Or the nationalistic prayer of the QAnon shaman in the Senate, in Capitol Hill. That is our ongoing spiritual task, to be and represent an alternative, defending the heart of faith against impostors and opportunists who quote Christianity but mix it with xenophobia. True religion is not xenophobia, but Philoxenia, love of strangers, not a fear or hatred, but love and welcome. We welcome the stranger, for in welcoming we may yet not only encounter the divine, but we may yet turn aside the fires of Sodom, or calm the floodwaters down that swallowed Tyana. We welcome not by grand gestures, but by simply being who we are, people of welcome, a community of open doors. And when I listen to my own voice now, I cannot miss interesting fact. My unmistakably foreign accent, that itself is the living proof. Not that I am an angel, far from it, but of the hospitality which lies at the heart of our community and of our faith. And that the life of our community is hospitality made flesh.